they will like, if somebody is unvaccinated and then dies of COVID, they'll mock them. Right? It's not a tragedy. They'll mock them. If somebody is in a blue state and the person is unvaccinated but masked and then dies of COVID, right, which is happening obviously because masks are not 100% protective, particularly cloth masks. You won't see any of the same sort of stuff. Even though that person could have gotten vaccinated, which is actually like 99% effective against death, you'll see a story about, like, there was one, I think, in the Washington Post today about a black mother. I think she was in a blue state, and she masked instead of getting the vaccine because she kept hearing that masks were super effective, and then she got it and she died. That wasn't a mocking story. But if you're an anti-vax person, or if you're a person who thinks the vaccine is terrible and horrible, and then you die of COVID, the media will openly mock your death. Okay, that is not because the media are, honest. It's because the media are of the belief universally that if you listen to the government, you are good. And if you don't listen to the government, you are bad. Even if you're vaxxed, even if you're doing the responsible things, if you're not listening to the government, this means you are bad.
Right. And it's, this is the same thing we used to see in basic training back in the Vietnam era, and even before then, where the enemy is dehumanized, right? I mean, it's psychological warfare, basically. Mm-hmm. Not that they think of it that way. It just happens to be what they're doing.
I mean, you saw this from the education secretary, right? Arne Duncan, yesterday, right? Obama's education secretary. He tweeted out something like, isn't it amazing the mindset of ISIS suicide bombers and anti-vax people is exactly the same? And it's like, oh, really? You can drop you in Kabul and you can check that out personally if you'd like.
Yeah, that was the craziest tweet I've seen this year, and yet there is no backlash for that.
I could get him a flight to Afghanistan right now if you'd like one. If you want to go talk to a suicide bomber and then talk to me, who I'm not anti-vax, but if you want to talk to an unvaxxed person and then the Taliban, I can make that happen.
Yeah, and we can get you an Airbnb for free if you take in a couple refugees. Airbnb is doing that right now.
But the media has been complicit in this shit since the very beginning. You know that by how they report, what numbers they reported. So it started out with the number of infections, then it went to the number of deaths, then it went to the number of infections again, right? Then it became what percentage of your state is vaccinated or not, and you should feel bad about that.
Yeah, that's right. They kept shifting around the stats, and they kept doing case counts as opposed to hospitalization and death counts.
Yeah.
Now, hospitalization and death counts, that's an actual fair metric. Death counts are the ones that you really care about. But instead, they kept doing case counts. And by the way, only very specific case counts. So, for example, over the last month and a half, all you saw was the spike in Florida, right? Huge spike in Florida. And it's true. We had a huge spike in terms of cases, and we had a big spike in terms of deaths, right? To the point where we were having a daily death rate that was on par with like the biggest death rate we saw back in January. And that was because a huge percentage of younger people were now getting it. Again, when you increase the denominator of caseload, even though the infection fatality rate stays the same, the numerator also is going to increase in kind. So you're going to get more absolute numbers of death, even though your chances of actually dying from the thing remain relatively low. More people get it, more people die. Okay, fine. There's another state that had a bigger spike than Florida on a per capita basis, and no one talks about it, and that's Louisiana. Louisiana has a 40% vax rate. The vax rate in Florida right now overall among adults is 52%. Actually, I'm sorry, among the entire population is 52%. Among people who are above the age of 60, it's 92% in the state of Florida. Louisiana is way lower. They had a huge spike, huge number of deaths in Louisiana. Why didn't you hear about that? You didn't hear about that because the governor is John Bel Edwards, who's a Democrat, right? Mm-hmm. So you just don't hear about that. It's not important. Right? It doesn't matter that if you look at the trajectory of the virus in, for example, Hawaii had a big spike. And nobody's talking about the Hawaii spike because, again, Hawaii is blue. Also, Hawaii's on an island, so it tends to debunk a lot of the notions that you can protect yourself from this simply by locking down for the rest of your life. So it's, and you'll see in the winter, because there are a lot of people, so New York's vaccination rate's like 59%. A huge percentage of people who are not vaccinated already had COVID. But you're going to see a spike in the Northeast in the winter because that's how it works, right? In the summer, in the South, the media constantly act as though it's a shock when in the South, in the summer, there's a spike. Yeah, idiots, it's hot outside. People went inside. And guess what? It's going to be cold in the winter in the Northeast and the Midwest, and people will go inside because it's cold outside. And then they will get the virus. Are you going to project the same kind of shock? I was looking at the stats today in terms of age-adjusted death rates per state, right? And that's kind of important because the thing striates really heavily based on age. So Florida, for example, should have like tons and tons and tons of deaths. It's the second oldest state in America. 21% of its population is over the age of 65. So if you do the age-adjusted COVID death rates, Phil Kerpen over at the Washington Examiner has done this. If you look at the age-adjusted death rates, Florida ranks like 17th best, right? But Florida is the one that's getting all the crap. Meanwhile, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, all these states really did horribly. You never hear about any of that. Cuomo was the hero of the Republic while he wasn't grabbing ass, right?
Yeah.
Or murdering old people. I mean, I guess it depends on which one of those you want to focus on. Yeah.
Well, Yeah, and he got real lucky with the Afghanistan thing because he went away.
Right.
That was off the headlines.
But we're living in I think Lewis Black said this in 2004 during a comedy show, and he was right then, and he would be even more right now. We're in a post-reality society, right? Everybody has become so tribalistic that they've regressed into their own corners, right? And there's very little space left for nuanced conversation. That's why people like Rogan get lambasted by the media so much, because they know he's doing what they're supposed to be doing and they feel embarrassed about it. It's like when you're a shitty husband and somebody does something nice for your wife and you get pissed off about it.
Yeah.
That's how the media is feeling, right? They're embarrassed and they won't admit it to themselves, right? And all they're going to do is lash out against anybody they see, like what you're talking about, having Democratic politicians cross the aisle and come on your show. That's not going to happen because they know the mainstream media will light their ass up. I mean, fucking Matthew McConaughey got compared to an alt-right person because he went on Rogan and Jordan Peterson's show. Are you fucking kidding me? Jordan Peterson doesn't give a fuck about politics.
Yeah.
If you've listened to anything that man has ever said, he doesn't give a fuck about the right or the left. If you ask him if it's important that the right and left exist, he would make some analogy about how what is a
Chaos and
bird
order.
with-
Right,
Yeah.
the right
Yeah.
represents order, the left represents chaos,
Yeah.
and you need both. Right,
Yes.
that's his thing. Yep.
Yeah, like a bird with one wing doesn't fly anywhere.
Right.
Right? It's a mother and a father. It's binary, which so is gender, by the way. We all know that. And speaking of that,